Now, so here we are. We're at the pinnacle of the idea of freedom, chapter 9. Couldn't be better than this, right? Where can you go from here? Well, he now talks about chapter 10, freedom, philosophy, and monism. In a certain sense, you could say he's led us right to the precipice. He says, okay, you have wings, go ahead and fly. And rather, however, than flying, we might say, you know what, I'm not quite sure. It looks pretty steep. I don't know if do I really have wings? Maybe I just need to cling to this cliff a little longer. So one by one, he's going to kind of pry our fingers loose from our tenacious hold on freedom, because he's come on, you can do it. The water's great. Just jump in. You can do it. But he's got to kind of coax us just to let us know. So this chapter is a little bit funny in that sense. In a certain sense, he's kind of prying us loose of our habits, of our tenacity to unfreedom. Yeah. Simple people who acknowledge as real only what they see with their eyes and touch with their hands require reasons perceptible to the senses for their moral lives. Such people need someone to communicate the grounds of action to them in a way understandable to their senses. They will allow these grounds for action to be dictated to them as commandments by a person they consider wiser and mightier than themselves, or whom they acknowledge for some other reason as a power over them. In this way, as principles of morality arise the principles of family, state, church, or divine authority mentioned in the last chapter. Those who are most limited in their horizons put all their faith in some one person. Those who are somewhat more advanced allow their ethical conduct to be dictated to them by a majority. We see how well that works, doesn't it? The American experiment shows just exactly what the joys and the sorrows of majority vote are, yes? They always rely on powers they can perceive. Those for whom the conviction finally dawns that these powers are basically human beings as weak as themselves will seek guidance from a higher power, from a divine being, whom they nevertheless endow with sense-perceptible qualities. You know? God is just a big human being, a big papa in the sky. Some people have that picture. Yeah? It's just a human being, bigger, and long hair, living in a big throne. Yeah, judging everything that we're doing, right? Picture it. So in other words, we take what is familiar to us and we project it as God upon the world. Now, they let the conceptual content of their moral life be communicated to them by this being, once again in perceptible ways. Whether the God appears in a burning bush, or dwells in a bodily human form among humans, and audibly declares for their ears what they should or should not do. At the highest ethical stage of development of naive realism, the moral commandment is separated from any entity foreign to oneself and is thought of as hypothetically as an absolute power within oneself. What people first understood as the outer voice of God, they now understand as an independent power in their inner selves, speaking of this inner voice in a way that equates it with conscience. But with this, the level of naive consciousness has already been left behind. And we've entered the region where moral laws become independent norms. They no longer have a bear, but become metaphysical entities that exist through themselves. They're analogous to the forces of metaphysical realism, which do not seek reality by way of human participation through thinking, but imagines a hypothetical reality added onto experience. So friends, how many of us have not said, I wonder what God wants me to do now? Is God telling me that I shouldn't be doing this? You know, I'm getting an obstacle thrown in my way. Is this God's way of telling me that I shouldn't be doing this? Or it looks like all the doors are open. Maybe God is telling me I should go do this, right? So don't we sometimes do this? We have a metaphysical idea of a God who's either opening or closing doors, making it easy or difficult for us. It's hard not to do that, but that's a metaphysical God. That's not a God that's experienced. It's a kind of a God who exists in some parallel universe who's either making our life easy or filled with difficulty, depending upon our picture of how life is going, you see? But it's an invention. It's a projection of our kind of human condition onto a parallel existence where a hypothetical God, not a God that has been perceived and known, but a God which is hypothetical to, and we can equate it with the voice of conscience. So Rudolf Steiner is saying this is an inferred God. This is not This is not a true God. This is a God that we're building up as an analogy of a mentor who appreciates and supports what we're doing, or who is punishing us for not jumping through the right hoops, right? Is that what God is really doing? Would God really do that to begin with? I mean, is God really that concerned about it? So anyway, we'd have to ask. So he says, naive consciousness tends to do this. We tend to take our human experiences and project them up and just magnify them and create divine beings, a picture of divine beings out of what's familiar to us. Mm-hmm. But really, this is an invention. This is not a God that has been experienced. So, friends, I've got to cut to the chase here. He says there are two forms of this God, by the way. There is the God of materialism, that matter is the God of everything, and the God of materialism would be called chance, because it was merely an event of chance that the Big Bang happened, and it just so happened that matter and energy were hurled out, and it just so happened that galaxies formed, and it just so happened that the sun and the Milky Way galaxy started hurling planets out of itself, and it just so happened that life arose. And it just so happened that here we are sitting in this room having this conversation. It's just a long series of accidents whose result is due to chance. So the God of materialism is called chance with a capital C. Chance is the God of materialism. But chance is merely nothing more than the crapshoot that we play in the back, in the back room with our friends. Do we really think that God just throws dice? I mean, is this really, what are you saying here? But this is the God of materialism, yeah?
I was just thinking, looking at a platypus, and he obviously threw some dice.
Right, the platypus is an awfully strange creature, an interesting picture. But another part, so you could say the God of materialism, the God of matter would be chance. But another picture is God as a spiritual being. We would then, the spiritual being as the extra human absolute behind phenomena. Yeah? We would seek the impulse to act in this hypothetical God. We would regard the moral principles in our reason as an expression of this God in itself, which has its own particular goals for humanity. In other words, God has something in mind for me. Just tell me what you wanted me to do, and I will do it. I promise. Just tell me. That's the kind of, when you feel that way. Just tell me what you want. I don't get it. But in a sense, we're surrendering our moral intuitions to a hypothetical God. You see, what we don't realize, friends, in both cases, is we have surrendered the source of our moral authority either to something which is an extension of the sense-perceptible world, the God of chance, or to a hypothetical God who's like a big papa in the sky who either agrees or disagrees with what we're doing. But in fact, the spirit of the human being is reality. When we have a moral intuition, when we did the 5 words, wisdom lives in the light, and we dropped the 5 precepts, we lived in an experience of divine revelation. We were in a spiritual experience of intuition. That intuition is the divine world in us. I'm sorry to say it, because it's actually a little bit terrifying. But it should also be liberating. When we are in the world of that pure intuition, we are actually, that is the divine world that is the human being is participating in consciously. Every human being has the capacity to lift up into this intuitive continuum and to draw the ideas that we love out of it. We do have that capacity. That's what this book is all about. He's encouraging us to say, we don't need to invent a hypothetical papa in the sky who's either liking or not liking, nor do we have to invent the God of chance who's just arranged all these solar systems and galaxies and matter according to rules and laws that we don't understand. Rather, we need to realize that as human beings, the divine speaks within us, within our own moral intuition. Now, friends, be careful with this. I'm not saying that each one of us is God. I'm not saying that. But God is working in us, not perceptibly, but intuitively. The divine works from within and from without. See? So God works through our biography, God works through our feeling life, God works through our body and the natural kingdom in which we're living, but this world isn't complete as we've seen. It's our job to find, God gives us wonderful process, but God also gives us the capacity to solve the riddles that we have because we don't get the whole of the chicken in our head, yeah? When we observe the chicken. We have to find the concept to understand the chicken. Yeah? So in the same way, God gives us the potential with our intuition to draw the ideas that we love out of the world continuum of ideas, potentials, possibilities, and to birth those in freedom. God has reserved a spot for the human being to become a co-creator. We hear this term, co-creation. What does it mean? It means that God allows us to have access to the same ideas that are operating in the world already, and to give birth to those through our activity because we love them. So this is an amazing philosophy because it's not talking about a hypothetical God or what God wants or doesn't want. It's a question of what do I lift myself into and what do I decide to do because I love it.
And what's the justification in prayer?
In which?
Prayer.
In prayer. Well, prayer is also helping us to come into that meditative space of intuition. Meditation and prayer are silencing the monkey mind and all the sense impressions and everything else, and actually devoting our attention, devoting the eye back to the source of our being. Now remember that our being partly lives in the spiritual world and is coming into us, but our being also lives in everything that we perceive and everything that we are conceiving. Our spiritual being is actually much bigger than we think it is. So we have to be able to honor the divine in the perceptual world. We need to honor the divine within what comes to us as the ideas because they're also part of us. And we need to honor the divine in what lives in us and as a potential of our feelings, our characterological disposition. But we can also say there is a true intuitive activity that I'm participating in where I can decide what I want to do. And that is also a part of our divine activity. So friends, the door is open in 4 different directions, really. And it's up to us to decide how much of that do we want to claim and to begin to become active with. That's really the beauty of being a human being. We have no idea how potentially creative and powerful and generously loving and creatively actually can be. We get inklings because we see remarkable human beings doing amazing things. Oh my gosh, you know. But then you begin to realize every human being has that potential. Every one of us has the potential to do the greatest genius or the most creative thing that's ever been done. Every one of us can become better than Leonardo. If we strove to it, we could, you see. And every one of us could be Aristotle. Every one of us could be anybody. But not that person. We would do that in our own individual way, you see. And what a tragedy, in a certain sense, that we don't rise up and claim this creative power living within us. Yeah. So, O joy when flames in man burn brightly, even when at rest. O bitterness when man becomes a thing in bonds, enslaved, when he would rise and active be. This was found in Rudolf Steiner's notes. Yeah. O joy when human flames burn brightly, even when at rest. O bitterness when man becomes a thing in bonds, when he would active be. So the fire of creativity needs to burn brightly in us, and Steiner's trying to fan the flames. God, I know you've got it in you. Come on, go, guys. We can do it, you see. So he's the big cheerleader. Rudolf Steiner is the big cheerleader along with Archangel Michael. He's trying to say, do you see who you are? Do you see what you can do? Why are you sitting around the fire? Come on, let's go. Yeah? Let's get on with it. Yeah? So live your idea. Find your idea, love it, and give birth to it. That's why we're here, friends. The world is waiting for us. The spiritual world is waiting for us. What are we waiting for? You know? So Christopher Fry said it beautifully in the play Sleeping Prisoners. There's a beautiful line in Sleeping Prisoners where he says, "It takes so many thousand years to wake, but will you wake for pity's sake?" That's really the cry. Come on, guys, we can do it. Let's go. We can do it. We've got a whole world to give birth to here. What are we waiting for? The trouble is, of course, there's so many distractions now. Our media and the internet and all the electronic things that we have. I mean, there's so many things we can lose ourselves in rather than kindling that fire. So we want to remember that these are tools that we use, not distractions to keep us from finding what really lives within us. Now, over on page 167, I'm having to skip some of it because we only have an hour left to finish the rest of the book. We'll do it. We'll do it one way or the other, just by excerpting from it. So because it acknowledges the validity, page 167, paragraph 6, because it acknowledges the validity of the world of percepts, monism must acknowledge the partial validity of naive realism. Anyone incapable of producing moral ideas through intuition must receive them from others. To the extent that humans receive their ethical principles from without, they are in fact unfree. But monism ascribes equal significance to ideas and to percepts. Ideas, however, can become manifest in human individuals. To the extent that human beings obey impulses from that side, they feel themselves to be free. But monism denies any validity to merely inferential metaphysics and therefore also to impulses to action deriving from so-called beings in themselves. A hypothetical God who has a plan for me is an invention of my mind. I'm sorry, friends, it's an invention. So what are you trying to tell me? Well, the better way to do it would be to sit down and meditate and say, what do I really love to do, you see? Rather than shaking my fist at God who's not giving me clear pictures, tell me what you want. That's not giving help. What I need to do is I need to enter into the realm of intuition and find for myself what I love to do. And if there are obstacles thrown in my path, I don't just say, oh, God doesn't want me to do that. In fact, if I really love something, I move all the obstacles aside. I overcome them one after the other because, no, I love this idea and I'm going to give my life to it. I don't care what you throw at me, world. I'm going to do this. No matter what, you see? So we don't take the presence of obstacles to be a sign from God that we're not supposed to do it, for goodness sakes. What are we thinking? Life gets hard and we give up? What kind of fighters is that? What kind of creativity can you have when life is tough? I think I'll take a vacation. I'm not going to bother with that. So no, if you love something, you give birth to it. Yeah. Tell a woman in labor, and never mind, you don't really have to birth that baby at all. Right. Yeah.
I've been told don't push.
Yes. But still, there's no turning back, you see. Wait a minute, I think I'd rather change my mind. No. So you can't change your mind. I mean, you're given your will to this. Come on, birth it. Give birth to the action. Come on. So over on page 168, paragraph 17, in the monistic worldview, human action is part unfree and part free. We find ourselves unfree in the world of percepts, and we realize within ourselves the free spirit. My friends, why do we find ourselves in the world unfree in the world of percepts? Because for cognition, the concept of a tree is determined by the percept of the tree. In the realm of cognition, I have to lawfully find the concept that belongs to the percept and act in accordance with that lawfulness. Yeah? So, in a certain sense, I'm not free in the realm of percepts. I'm only free in the realm of the moral concept. Now, the question is, wait a minute. That means I can't be free, right? No, he's not saying that. It's just saying, if we're trying to get our moral concepts from cognitive concepts, of course we're not going to be free. All we're doing is we're finding the laws that already apply and acting in accordance with them. But in order to do this, we need to find a way to translate the moral concept into the perceptual and conceptual world. So this is where we're going.